a form containing the query and the people who were in the database, and it actually executes the search. This could potentially be 3 tests and might have been there. Okay. Do you think guys think that a test will run now? The web test.
With that region?
Yeah, the original web test runs. So now this test, the checks, we go to the front page, we click add new contact, we do things.
So the last sentence, last thing.
The last, this runs as well. See? Should find save contacts. It's very slow though, it takes 2 seconds to run. This is why I want unit tests as well as integration tests. And the funny thing is, you guys think I'm joking, but I'm not. I think this test is way too slow. But I mean, I wouldn't have believed me if this was, if I said that this was the actual, that the application was running now. So let me prove it. So I'll make a web server that's the contact web server. Contact web server, which has this port 0 in it. So, no. So I'm now going to make this reusable so I can, so I can show you it working. Port, we'll make a server with that port. And I'll make this into a member variable, and then we say contact web server.start, which contains, well, this thing here, I guess. Actually, I want this up here. Server start, and let's throw some exception, and I said we want to say, this could be contact web server dot get URL, which is what I wanted the Jetty guys to add to Jetty. But then listen to me. So now I have encapsulated the web server in a class by itself. The test tour still runs. I can make a main method here that says new contact web server port 10,080, for example. I'm going to start it here. Some exception. Run this as a Java application. Actually, I know what's going on. I will debug this. I will debug this as a Java application. Okay, so if I open a web browser, contacts, right? Yeah. So here is the application. Add a new contact. Could be nicer, but and there it is. Oops, no, it was a bit of a mistake there, but and also, of course, the search doesn't actually work because it's not implemented yet in the fake repository.
Where that's right in the URL. I mean, context.
Yeah, the reason this is the where I mounted. So I'll fix that. Let's say that this is called. Let's call the app. Let's say I'm going to introduce this as a parameter. So this is the context root. And I'm going to terminate the web server here. So let's say that I call this for bare knuckle instead. So that's the name of my web app. So if I run it now, then this thing here should be bare knuckles. So that's what it is. Now there's nothing. Now there's nobody here, of course, because it's gone when I restart it. Yes, I could do more, but I could also end it here. Yes, that was what I wanted to do. So, I knew there was something. Okay, so let's say that we want to find out what the hell is, why is this search thing not working? Right? This is in my contact servlet and the doGet method here. So why don't you set a breakpoint there and refresh it? And then I'm in the debugger. What's the debugger shortcut in Eclipse? I've been using .NET for too long now. F6 is the next one. F6 and F5 it goes into, right? Okay. So, oh, wait, I'll get in there. Okay, so here we're in the writer. That seems okay. Oh yeah, that always returns all the contacts. That's what the problem is. So if we want, we can implement this as a more proper thing as well. But I don't know if that will be very interesting to you guys.
Should we have another use case instead of unit test in that case?
Yeah. Actually, now let's, so, is your flip over here? No. Too bad. Okay, so what I've shown you now is that I have, I use pops. I don't think so. So you got the test over here, right? And the test starts at the server. And inside of the server, there's a servlet. And the servlet has a dependency to a repository. The server repository is over here. And I've got a test that goes all the way down here, but it fakes the servlet or the repository. Now the next thing I would want to do is to implement to test drive the repository over here, which would we have one. All right, so my brilliant, thank you. So we got the web test, and the web test starts the server, which is Jetty. Jetty. And the server contains the servlet. The servlet in this case plays the same role as you would with a controller if you were using .NET. If you're using .NET ASP, yeah, you guys don't use that. If you're using Spring, yes, thank you. Spring MVC would have a controller here. It has a dependency on a repository. And for now, I've implemented a fake repository. Fake. I have a test here, servlet test. And the next thing I would implement would be a, let's call it a VB test here, that tests a database-driven implementation of this. I'll show you just the test. We don't have time for much more than that. So a typical database test would be something like, so I'm in the task package, and I say contact JDBC repository test. Contact JDBC repository. That sounds good, right? Contact JDBC contact repository. Where should I put the JDBC? All right. So test should save people, for example. I thought Ukraine was sort of a Christian country these days.
Both do the same thing.
So So I create a repository here. I'm going to make a method for that. That's going to be a null for now. And then I say, so if I do contact repository dot create person Darth Vader with his phone number, then if I say assert that contact, oops, wrong assert that. That's also the wrong assert that. Assert that contact repository dot find by name. So if we search for everybody, let's say, then that should contain a new contact named Darth Vader with that phone number. So that's test number one. This is a save test, and then should search for people. So in this case, I need to have at least 2 people in the repository. I'm going to make it in. So now the repository is a member variable. So if I have Darth Vader and I have Anakin Skywalker, they again it's sort of this should tell you something. They have the same phone number. All right. So if I search for Vader, I should find Darth Vader, but I should exclude Anakin Skywalker. So that would be a test that works across many implementations of the repository. As a matter of fact, I can plug in the new fake contact repository. And of course now it will fail because I haven't implemented an equals method on the contact here. But now it fails for different reasons here. Maybe I should have that. Macro for equals. No, I don't have my equals macro. So if we say
maybe Control Shift S.
Control Shift S to save everything. Well, right now it's just. I just need to say return. Let's say other dot full name. Yeah. Let's say other dot range dot equals this dot range. So now one of those should fail and the other one shouldn't. Which one fails? So here, Anakin Skywalker Darth Vader does not contain element X and any of that. There is not. I didn't recommend this using print in this case here. Yeah, so now we say that Anakin Skywalker plus Darth Vader does not exclude Anakin Skywalker. So now I actually have to implement. And I don't think that anybody will be surprised to see how that happens. Okay, so what's interesting, of course, if now when I implement a database, a real database repository here, my integration test, the web test, it will still pass if my tests here are correct. And also, of course, the web test really should have checked that it didn't find people that you didn't search for. So it was not so good. Good stuff. More questions? Do you guys want me to review the code that I went over? Or do you?
Pretty sure that URL for scanning the
Sure.
because whoever's doing this looks quite weird.
start the test the server again. So okay, this breakpoint didn't help so much. Okay, yeah. So this one. Find contact is the name of the button request. It's a artifact. That's what a get URL will look like. It's the normal get URL for this kind of port. Nothing special about it. Okay. More questions? Would you guys?
Share your code.
Yes. You said show or share?
Share.
Sure. I think that this code, there's this code pretty much similar to this already on my GitHub repository, github.com/Johanness. You'll find this as the Java EE Swipe Kotlin, and I've got various versions of it there. I might even push up this version that you saw today. I thought just to review some of the code. So one thing that's sort of interesting is this way of initializing the servlet with a repository. Of course, in a real application, you want this to be, dynamically bound and things like that. So how do we do dependencies in real applications? Or how did we do it 10 years ago?
Oh.
We did this. Let's try that. Contact repository.
Serious lookup.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh no, I know. But why not?
At least we knew the factory.
Why? We're kind of so that actually works pretty well, because when I don't want this to work, that would be in the case of the tests, right? And in the case of the tests, I actually call the setter explicitly anyway. So this code is never, so the init is never called for my servlet test. So this is actually how I wire these sort of applications when I work with them in production. It's sort of a combination of a singleton and a setter injection done without any framework. All right.
Is it okay to test that inside the application you set right text.html, I don't remember the properties.
Yes.
That's the internals of your implementation instead of paper.
This is just an example.
No. I mean, these tests, they have these tests have more weaknesses than that. I'm not so concerned about this because your application will probably not work correctly if that's not text HTML. So this is actually important. What might not be so important is whether these are double quote or single quotes, which will break the application as well. So these sort of assertions, they're a good first start, but they're not necessarily what you want to do in the end. And I'm very glad that you asked this, because this gives me the chance to plug a framework that I've started working on that's not complete yet. So I'll see if I have a test that can demonstrate. Yeah, I think this. So this is actually pretty nice. So this test now is red because of some reason I don't know. Actually, it's red because I didn't run coverage on it. I'll turn this off. Okay. So please ignore the red. This here I have a form. Here I construct the form with Java code. So this is actually constructing HTML code. And then I say assert that if you look for the inputs then you ask for the IDs, it contains these names. If you look for the inputs and look for the values, it contains these things. So that's more higher level way of doing assertion. This is not an assertion library. This is a XML manipulation library, and it just happens that manipulating XML is a pretty good way to do assertions. I think we're. How long did we say that this first session should last? Around an hour. I think it's been about an hour.
Yep.
It's been more than that. So I'll run through the rest of this. So we'll distribute the slides afterwards. Here you'll find the test I started with, and how to start the server, the web XML, the initial servlet, the first test for the servlet, and then as you saw, I refactored a lot. Yeah, there was some more time for refactoring. So this is a sort of this is a example that's small enough to demonstrate, and of course I'm sure you're wondering how useful this might be in real applications. So I used a similar approach at the Norwegian Agricultural Authority. There was a project that's in production now. It was about 3 or 4 man-years of effort. We started out with the same sort of servlets that you saw here, and then we grew that into a MVC architecture by refactoring. And we had, so a controller will create a view, retrieve a model from the repository, set the model into the view, and render the view. And the view could look something like this. This is Java code similar to what you saw earlier, where I'm constructing the actual HTML with Java code. And this was something that worked really well for this one application. The context here was interesting because we didn't have any web designers, so they didn't care whether it was possible to change it or not. One thing that is very interesting is you see here, hidden field. This is a method, right? And I'm here as a phone number field. So I'm reusing parts of the HTML, and these are, of course, just normal method calls, which is an advantage when you're constructing the HTML yourself. So abstractions don't need to require a framework. Yes?
Why didn't you use a separate view in JSP?
Oh, because I hate JSPs. Good question, though.
So you're not even rebuilding.
Huh?
But it's ugly.
Oh, JSPs are ugly as well.
Okay.
So there are two sort of jokes aside. There are 3 problems with JSPs. First, the way that it compiles the JSP makes it pretty hard to debug. When things go wrong, it tends to be hard to see what's going on. Reuse, like here I have a method that is a unit of reuse. Reuse in JSP requires taglets, which are pretty difficult to construct. They require much more work than reuse in this context. And the third thing is that reusing a JSP from one application to another application is basically impossible because the JSPs have to be situated within the web content folder. So you have to use stuff like overlays, which is buggy at best. So those are the 3 reasons I don't use JSPs. But this is an approach that was fun here, and it also has the advantage that you saw the automatic test runner, right? When I change something here, it detects that it has to rerun. It doesn't do that with JSPs. I have an approach that's sort of in between, but it's not perfected yet. I'll show you a little bit of code for this. This was from an earlier example of this code here. Let's see. Yes. So here I'm reading a HTML page as a resource. And so this is the normal HTML page, and then I'm using queries to look up and replace parts of the HTML. This is sort of a jQuery approach to Java. So that's also with the XML library that I'm working on. So I read up, I have a static HTML page, and I replace parts of it with Java. So I think that the point is that JSPs have some really big weaknesses, and it's a pity that we're not investigating more alternatives. So it's so overused.
You could use some template engines.
Yeah.
Something like Velocity, Apache Tiles.
I have used Velocity, and it's better than JSPs, but it has many problems as well. So this approach here was something I made to kind of get away from the template. In this case, let's see, I think I still have that. Yeah, so this is my template in that case. So this is just normal HTML. So in this case, the template is HTML, and then here it's Java coded manipulates HTML to make it live. So, but I've never been really happy with Velocity either. It's better than JSPs, but it doesn't make me happy. So, yeah. So here is building the document. So that was the Norwegian Agricultural Authority, and then we have the Norwegian Power Transmission System Operator called Statnett, where I was architect for a project around 10 million euros, whole project. We had some of this. We had a rich client, so it was not web driven like this was, but in it we had one repository implementation. So all the power stations and the production plants and the power reserves would all use the same repository implementation. And we had one service, so whenever you communicate from the client to the server, it went through the same service. The way to do that is to use commands and queries going down to say, so that's a serializable object that goes to the server, executes on the server, returns the results back. And we have the same domain model on the client and the server. Also no Spring, even though the last time I saw it was 100,000 lines of code there. That was really nice. So if you haven't tried working without Spring, you really should try it. How many people have written a big project without Spring? Okay. This is interesting, isn't it? Do we really know if Spring helps us or not? All right, this also has a pretty cool thing. So you saw how I started to make the web server. Looks sort of like this. So I made this web server class that I ran. You could actually make that into the main class of a jar file and then have an executable jar file. And that's the whole deployment unit. So instead of having an app server running on the server, we would deploy a jar file, and that jar file contains Jetty and starts up everything it needs. It contains its startup script and the Jetty. So upgrading means copying one new version of the jar file out. Upgrading which version of the app server, Jetty, that we're using means changing the mail and POM to refer to a new version, building it, and then it's with all the dependencies. So it's so in this case we stopped using app servers as well. And the last project I was on was for Sparebank again, which you can guess was a bank, where we had about 10 web service clients, and we used, like I mentioned, YOX, the Java XML library, and HTTP URL connection. This is what a web service call with a JOX looks like. Actually, this is pretty right. So I construct the SOAP HTML. So this XML. This constructs XML, and then I serialize it over an endpoint, and I parse the response with XPath. This is not very strange, but nevertheless we're not using this sort of thing, all right? So has anyone used this sort of approach, or are you all using generated Java classes with JAXD and WS? So do you guys use web services, web services? Yeah. And do you use JAX WS?
Yes.
Yes. So this is the code that JAX WS replaces. It's not so much.
Also, you can use Spring VS, which is more.
Well, that's sort of, you know what I'm going to say already, don't you?
Do you use any dependencies in
I haven't for the last 3 years.
Well, you can try Ruby client.
Yeah, much happier. Hmm?
Yeah, you can try Ruby client for services. Actually,
Yeah.
make.
So what's interesting is that in most cases when you've got, I think also with Spring Web Services, you generate the code that would be this sort of stuff here, right? The actual request. So you have Java code that simulates this. And then in every case where I've seen that, you have some adapter that copies between that generated object and your domain object, right? This is exactly the same, and in general, what I found is that the code to copy between your domain objects and an XML structure is less verbose than the code to copy between your domain objects and the generated objects. I had one example of this at Spider where we actually implemented one web service in both ways, and this approach, the approach without generated code, had this was, I think, 15 lines of code to convert between the objects. The one that used generated code was almost 30 lines of code. So it's sort of, these are small numbers, of course, but it's kind of like, even if you don't look at the generated code, you still write more code when you generate the code. It's interesting. It's like when someone really helps you and they don't. All right, this is also kind of cool because this is. I mentioned I used HTTP URL connection, which comes with Java. I didn't want a dependency here, so you've got sort of this code here is some of the ugliest code, and by HTTP URL connection API in Java is really badly written and really old-fashioned, but it works better than adding another dependency to your account, in my experience. I actually had a lot of trouble finding this line here. It took me a month to get error handling correctly. Not a month of work, but error handling wasn't working in the first place. All right, never mind. So when it comes to frameworks, very often I find that you aren't going to need it. When you do, so what I do is I do test-driven development and invest a lot in getting good tests that don't constrain the design. And then I only invest as much in frameworks as needed to get those tests to pass. And in general, I found that the less I invest in frameworks, the happier I am. Thank you. So I think we'll take a 15-minute break.